David's group has been playing in superhero campaigns for a few years now, and his group is getting really bored of it. Now, David isn't really comfortable playing any other campaign other than like a superhero campaign, and so David has to come up with like a new, fresh idea in order for his players to not get burnt out. David has an idea, and he pitches the idea of a campaign where you're all playing super villains on death row or put in a task force meant to complete jobs that they're not expected to survive from. Some would even call it a self-harm crew. The DM rushes the introduction of all these different characters, like he goes through their backstories and stuff like that. You can tell what characters are his favorites based off of how long he spends on the backstory for each character. Like Deadshot, I think his name is Deadshot. Is it Deadshot or Killshot? Well, he and Harley, they get like a good amount of time at the table, but then once it gets to like Killer Croc, Captain Boomerang, and Diablo, he just kind of rushes through it. The DM soaks up a lot of the spotlight in Harley's backstory stuff, role-playing his Joker NPC, which makes everyone at the table uncomfortable. Feel free to include a clip of the Joker doing something really weird that if a DM did at the table would make the players really uncomfortable. You have a lot to pick from. Any clip would do.
You left me in a black hole of rage and confusion.
The players are a little confused because they expected their characters to die horrifically at some point. I mean, it's the Suicide Squad. They're expecting their characters to just be brutally killed off without hesitation. But the DM seems focused on developing the backstories at the table. He says he wants to make a very narrative game. And then for the background music, he just puts his Spotify-liked songs on shuffle. And then every minute he has to skip to find the right song, but none of the songs are the right song. All of the songs don't fit. Now that we've gone through backstory and stuff like that, the characters are fully assembled as a team, and there still isn't like a mission or a task or a reason for them to be in a group, so they're just kind of, dicking around, role-playing with each other. The DM only seems to really care about the NPCs that he wrote and developing the backstories for those NPCs and role-playing as those NPCs. He doesn't have an actual plot. He just has all these cool NPCs he wants to go over. The players are waiting around for the plot to happen, and the DM's like, "This is Katana. She's got my back. I'd advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of her victims." The players are like, cool, do we make it to the city yet? Don't you want to say anything to Katana first? Not really. Once the story begins, the players actually get to play Dungeons and Dragons. They start to come up with escape plans. How are they going to try to get out? Because right now they don't really care about the mission that they've been sent on. They know that they're villains. They're bad guys, and bad guys do bad things. And so right now they're figuring out how are we going to escape and do some bad things. And later on, they get to go fight mutants in the city, like these weird mutant dudes. And they, do battle with the mutant dudes. That Joker NPC from Harley's backstory comes in and then immediately dies, and Harley returns to the group, so it had no bearing on the plot whatsoever. It was just sort of this weird interlude that they did. The players are starting to lose whatever fun they were having at the table because all of the plans for escaping they're trying to put together keeps getting thwarted by the DM. The DM is spending a lot of the time trying to outsmart the players and shepherd them back to the plot. Not only does he has the bombs in their neck, which, is pretty standard for the Suicide Squad, but he also has like a team of SEAL Team 6 following the players around to make sure they're going to complete the mission, which, like, why are we here if there's just going to be a SEAL Team 6 squad here with us? The players kind of lose their agency around this time, so they just kind of lose their excitement for the campaign, and they just kind of go to encounter and just kind of knock the game out. Brain dead cantrip mode. That's the players right now. The thing is, the DM wrote the plot of the game expecting the players to play their characters as the superheroes that they normally did, except this time they kind of look like villains, but they're really superheroes. That's what the DM expected. That's how the DM wrote the game. But the players are like, no, we're bad guys. We're villains. We want to do terrible things. That was the pitch of the game. The DM isn't having it, though. The DM PC Green Beret isn't letting them stray off from the plot. And eventually the players, they shut their brains off. They kind of sink into their chairs. They, the role-playing is kind of dialed down. And they do whatever they can to finish the game. And then once the game is over, they stop playing with that DM because they've been burnt out on the campaigns that he's been running. A few years go by, they're just playing basic D&D, but they do kind of miss that old pitch for the campaign being like a Suicide Squad campaign until they get a new member of their group, a guy named James. And James hears stories about this Suicide Squad group, and he's like, I can make that work. That sounds pretty fun. I could do that. The group agrees to let James run this campaign, thinking, if it's not fun the first session, we'll just go back to playing normal D&D. Some of them make new characters, some of them don't. And then the first session starts with a TPK. The whole squad is just brutally wiped out by enemy soldiers, and the players are just slack-jawed at the table, watching all of their characters get ripped to bloody shreds. Normally, a DM in any other scenario would be panicking. The entire party just died. But James isn't panicking. James just looks down at the group like, so as Savant's brains are being pecked at by seagulls, we're now going to cut away from the distraction squad and to the actual squad that was sneaking onto the island. Go ahead and introduce your backup characters, guys. It was all planned. The DM planned to have a TPK. The initial party was just the distraction, so the actual party could sneak onto the island. The players now realize their characters are actually very expendable. The players who didn't make backup characters, some just reused their old PCs, some decide to make the weirdest player characters that they possibly can. They have a man-eating shark-human hybrid. There's one girl who can control rats. Another guy kills people with acid polka dots. The DM fully leans into the weirdness. He spotlights the player character's weirdness. He thinks that's the fun of the game. And that is the fun of the game. Just being as weird as they possibly can be, fully knowing that their characters can just die at any moment. And when the player characters start actually playing the game, the GM isn't shepherding them to the plot at all. They're just stranded on this third world country island, just trying to figure out a way to complete the goal that they were assigned to do. The DM still has a compelling plot though. What he does is he makes very interesting villains, and a lot of villains on top of that. He starts off with these 2-3 villains. He makes a general, a dictator, a mad scientist, and they all have their own different goals as well. Since each villain is different, the players have to come up with different plans to defeat all the different villains that the DM has. The campaign builds this climactic ending where the city is being destroyed by a giant space monster. The players are cheering every single time a character dies. The PCs have to band together to figure out some way that they can kill this giant alien monster that is mind controlling the citizens of this island. They didn't even realize that they became heroes. They were villains turned into heroes just because it was fun to be heroes for a bit. The two different campaigns, even though they had the same pitch, had two complete different outcomes. In the first campaign, the GM prepped what was really a superhero D&D game that just so happened to have the villains as the main characters. And then the GM had to spend time wrangling the villain PCs to follow the plot that really wasn't built for them. In the second game, the GM prepped an island with a bunch of villains with a goal, and let the players loose. Make whatever weird player character you want to. Do whatever plan you can come up with. Whatever you can do, you're probably gonna die. The first game suffered from what we call Ludo-narrative dissonance. Ludo-narrative dissonance is when the story doesn't really line up with the gameplay. And that was the fault of the first campaign. The story was, you guys are bad guys that are expendable. But in the gameplay, the expectation was that they were going to do the right thing, and the GM was making sure that the characters didn't die to serve the story. Once this problem was patched out in the second game, the players ended up having more fun because their expectations for the game matched up with how the game actually went. If you like the videos that I am posting, you should subscribe to the channel because I'm just making so many videos and I just keep upgrading them. I got this new microphone that I'm still figuring out how to use, and the videos are only going to get better from here, so you should subscribe to get in on that early.